today we'll be building sliders or boat sides, and this particular video is more like a how I do it rather than a how-to video, because tools involved in this is a little bit more specific, so it's unlikely you're going to have to go out and buy these just for this project. But if you have access to them, it's a relatively simple mod. So here's my current trail truck. It's a VS410 chassis with this FJ45 cab, but it's running TRX4 axles underneath. Both it has the locking and unlocking diffs. Currently I have this partially disassembled, but what I'm looking to do is actually replace these stock VS410 plastic sliders with stainless ones. So I want to show some of the past stainless sliders I've done. So let's start off from the earliest. This is my first ever one. This is actually for a TRX4 chassis and an axial Yeti cage. So it's a bit of a wacky one, but again, all stainless. You have mounting points. This is a bit difficult one to do, especially with the bends. Trying to get it to fit the profile of the TRX4 rails, which has like tapered ends, and these mounting tabs. Next up would be these ones. These are, again, TRX4 chassis, but these are made for the Power Wagon body, both the cab and the bed. This just goes sort of between both of those pieces of the body. Next up is a TRX4 chassis again, but this is for the Proline C10, I think 1966 C10, so the one again with the cab and body. And also this one, this is actually the only VS410 sliders I've built so far. This is for, again, a Power Wagon cab, and this one's a little bit basic. This one's a lot less scale, if you like, than the other three here. But yeah, this is basically what I've made so far, so I thought I'd share with you how I create boat sides or sliders for Narsea Crawler. So the first part of making boat sides is actually start with a paper template. This is pretty typical of all sheet metal fabrication from my understanding. So this is a template I've made. There's not much in terms of technique per se for this. Some tips are just, again, pretty typical of fabricating stuff. Measure twice and cut once. And the good thing with paper is it's cheap, it's really easy to work with, and again, if you do mess up, you can just cut another one, or in this case, like me, I just stuck a bit of masking tape to extend a part that was too short and just recut the shape. So yeah, so these will basically mount up to the chassis here, these holes at the bottom. This is with the boat side removed. So I'm going to stick this on temporarily to show you basically how it all fits together. So here I have it mounted up like I would with a real boat side with some screws here. And we're just going to put the body on. Now that I have it mounted up with the body on properly, you can see that this part actually just fits in between the body and frame rail itself. So this front piece sort of extrudes up to act as a bit of a mud cover, stop debris going into the inside. This part, as you can see, overhangs parts of the body, and that is so that I can spot weld a solid rod here. I'm going to be using 1/8" rod here, and that will just give it an extra bit of durability and scale, so it looks like rock rails, if you like. Back here you can see another bend. Since this overall profile is sort of sloped, the back here is also bent up, and this will basically just tuck behind the body itself like that. To make the boat sides, I'll be actually using this stainless sheet. This is 0.8 millimeters thick, as you can see here. And this is basically as thin as I personally feel safe to go without running into durability issues. And you don't want to go any thicker because it gets pretty heavy pretty quickly, especially if you have a bigger, wider scale bodies. I found 0.8 millimeters to be a good balance in both durability and weight. Next up is to actually mark the template onto the piece of material that you want to use. How I like to do is actually just stick it onto the sheet that I'm working on, and then mark out the corners with a marker, and then use a scribe and a ruler to connect the dots on those corners and get the shape out. And also with this template, you only need one. You can do two if you like for left and right, but what I usually do is I just make one and then just flip it over since it's mirrored. And also with fabrication like this, I usually like to try and get the straight edges on the square side of the material, so you know that you're getting a nice straight edge out of it. So here, this is the longest straight edge on the design, so I'm going to just put it onto this edge of the material. have are now our bends and cuts all marked out and scribed into the material, so that's not coming off. This is mainly for when you're using the angle grinder, which I'll be cutting the material with. The heat will usually basically fade the markings, so you always want to use something scratched into the material you're working in so that it doesn't fade. I'm going to go ahead and actually cut it first. I'm going to be using a machine to cut it. It just has a straighter edge. I'll mark the next piece in. That'll just allow me to use the material more efficiently so I waste less. So here it is, nice clean edge right there. And I'm going to move on into marking out the next one. Here are the two pieces of each boat side cut out. Now I've also trimmed the other ends of the edges as well since they're straight anyways. Again, using the machine. Obviously you can hand cut this, but it's just quicker with a machine like this. Next up, I've actually also marked out the holes here. What I'm going to do is actually tape these together and then drill the holes with them stacked on top of each other, so they'll make sure that they are the exact same on each piece. And that will also allow me to actually bolt these two pieces together while I'm cutting it, so it's going to be more accurate and more symmetrical. So here I have everything taped up to make sure it doesn't slip, and also using a vice grip I have sort of make sure that it's clamped down together. Again, this is also good practice to use a vice grip when you're especially sheet metal, because if it catches it will turn into basically a blender and your hands will be in the way. So going to drill basically 4 holes here. I have a 3mm drill bit, perfect for the M3 screws that I'll be using. So next up we're going to actually deburr the holes first. As you can see right now, because of the burrs, this sheet metal is not actually flat, so we're going to go ahead and swap over to just any old large sized drill bit. Next, clamp this together and actually put some bolts through it and a nylock nut, and that basically makes sure that this can't move and slide across each other, and so that the cut will be as close as possible and symmetrical as possible. Taped up on the one side and bolted together with some stainless hardware here. And you know, this piece, this side, not to worry because that's already the finished dimension, so we can leave the tape on. But the rest we're just going to basically go in and do some cuts here, some cuts there. I have the piece clamped down, and I'll just be mainly using this cut-off disc again to cut through, basically to shape the whole piece, and then probably clean up with a file. Here it is with everything cut, obviously quite rough and ugly at the moment. I think we can probably finish it with a file, no problem. Again, we'll just keep this bolted together for now still. Obviously the burrs are kind of getting into the middle of the piece, but we can worry about those later on. So here we are, the two pieces are all cleaned up and obviously deburred. We're going to move into the bending stage. So this is basically the shaping of the boat sides itself. We're going to have to put bends, 3 bends in each, so 1, 2 and 3 here, and you know, the angles is mostly guesswork, we just have to hand fit it afterwards. But for now we're going to actually move on and use the sheet metal bender machine. So I'm actually going to do this bend first. This is going to be what's bolted into the chassis, and then the next 2 bends afterwards. This is the front, and the back is just bent up again to fit the sides of the body. So here I'm going to first adjust the angle for the bend. I want a 45-degree bend here, so here we have our bent piece. This definitely does not fit right now, but so get a quick idea of what it's going to be like. There's still quite a lot of finishing to do. Obviously, this bend is way too steep, this bend is almost right, and this bend is definitely not steep enough. So obviously it won't go back into the sheet bender because you have to do it in order, or else some of the bends would interfere with each other. So we're going to go ahead and just put it in the vise and bend it by hand. Here we have it all bolted up. It actually fits really nice. The back here is a little bit short, but other than that, I think it looks good. The one last thing is I'm actually going to add a little trim piece here, since I've left actually, well, originally it was going to be like 3mm extra, but at the back here, all we're going to do is spot weld it on, and this will basically just act as a trim piece, sort of a rock rail type of detail, and also give it a little bit of durability. With everything all cut and bent to shape, and also I've also cut out the 1/8 inch trim piece for the edge of the boat sides. Now we're going to move on to spot welding here. So here we have it, this is all finished. Obviously need to rearrange the location of different things in the chassis, but all in all, these are the boat sides done. Here it is. Just going to reinstall all the links, drive shafts, whatnot. Here is the finished product. It actually fits a bit tight at the back here. As you can see, it sort of pushes the body in a little, but not too big of a deal. Overall, you know, you get a lot more clearance compared to the stock one. I probably gain about at least 10mm of clearance on the sides. In terms of fitment in the inner fenders, fits pretty good. You can see there. So that's basically it for the video. Still got obviously a few things to sort out in terms of mounting up all the electronics, especially the shifter servos here and the receiver box on the interior. But for the most part, really happy with the results here. And again, not quite a tutorial today, it's more like just how I do it. A lot of the tools used are a bit specific. At least I hope you found the video somewhat interesting, and that's it from me. We'll catch you on the next one.